You're listening to In Session, where marriage and family therapist Mark Ponce sits down with your therapist and other therapists in the community to talk about who they are, why they do the work, and what keeps them coming back. This is Beyond the Intake, where we slow down and talk about the parts of therapy, identity, and being human that don't fit into a first session. Thank you for being here. Please enjoy today's episode.
Okay, Dr. Phebe, welcome back after our long break. Thanks for coming back. Yeah. I had a question earlier that I wanted to ask you when you were talking about the clients that you see. It sounded to me that you share a lot of characteristics with them, a lot of shared experiences, and I'm wondering how you balance your view of how you healed through or grew through or struggled in those experiences with how the client did so in their unique experience.
I always ask myself, what is the purpose of my self-disclosure? Like a lot of times I'll have these thoughts going on in my head of different things that I might want to share in the moment. And I in the moment have to ask myself, what is the purpose? Like what is the point? How is this going to assist in their healing? Right. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I go to therapy, to work through my stuff so that I'm not bringing them up in session too. But I think that's one of the things that has really helped me separate that to where, I remind myself that my experience is my experience and my clients is theirs. And so just because something has worked for me, it doesn't mean that it's going to work for them, because the systems that I have faced, even though we have very similar life experiences or shared life experiences, that doesn't mean that they have the same systems that they're facing, right? The kind of parents that I have might not be the same parents that my client has, right? So I cannot expect them to communicate in that same way, right? And again, going back to the meeting the client where they're at, I think that's one of the big things there that I remind myself that every single time. You're not the same. This is not your story, right? This is your client writing their story. Allow them to write their story, whatever that looks like.
You ever find it hard?
Yes, sometimes it's hard. They're having moments, but I also think that with more and more experience, I'm not facing that struggle as much and I think I experienced that a lot more when I was working with teens. And I think it's, again, that self-work. And so when I started working through my stuff as a teen and going through my recovery and owning my story and being able to be comfortable sharing my story in ways that are helpful, it really helps me to draw that line there, right? That just because I was looking for somebody to save me as a teenager doesn't mean that this teenager is looking for somebody to save them too. It can be hard. It can be hard. And I also have to look at my limits too, because I have this belief, and maybe some of the clinicians might too, but I have this belief that I'm not going to be the solution to every single problem in my client's life. I also have that belief that I'm limited, right? I don't have this grandiosity around myself and my skills or my gift to the world that, I'm going to be the end all be all for this person. I tell my clients all the time, you're spending literally an hour of your entire week with me in the session. The people that are outside of here, they matter even more, right? So how are you going to heal within that community? What is that going to look like? So in some ways, it might feel like I'm minimizing myself, but I think that I'm putting myself exactly where I need to be.
I think it makes a lot of sense. And it's so dynamic as therapists of how much we can recognize by session what the client needs from us.
Yeah. It's the power dynamics also, right? I'm not here to be a savior. I think a lot of us as clinicians end up having some sort of savior complex that maybe we came into the field with, like, oh, well, I'm easy to talk to. I love helping people, blah, blah. Even the term help, right? I'm very careful around using that help word, and because, again, the power dynamics, and it kind of makes it seem like if we look at a hierarchy, that I'm above the client and I'm helping them. And I don't look at it that way, right? I'm sitting on the same level. We're on the same plane here, right? And so I'm just a passenger in your car. Now, sometimes you might drive a little recklessly. I might be like, okay, hold up, bro. I'm gonna need you to slow down, And there's going to be times where my client might say, I don't want to drive. I can't do this. And I might have to be the one to take their hand very gently and put it on the steering wheel and be like, you've got this.
How do you navigate the times where a client is struggling and wanting that relief so bad that they're like, all right, Dr. Phoebe, you understand me, and I need you to tell me what to do. What do you do?
Well, if that's the client's need, then that's what we do. That's where I meet them. If they're like, I need you to tell me, for example, I've had clients who are like, hey, I need to have this difficult conversation with somebody. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to even go about this. I need you to tell me what to say. And I will tell them and we'll do a role play. So sometimes they will ask you specifically for that. And I know that in our training, we have been taught, put it back on the client and have them figure it out. But sometimes it's just not helpful. And we end up with frustrated clients because you're not, again, meeting them where they're at. Right. And so I even recognize that in the session, or I will name that. So it sounds like, today we're needing some support around how to have this conversation. Yeah, I don't know what to say. And, can you just maybe help me? Okay, well, I have an example. You don't have to use this one exactly, but as you're talking about this particular situation, this is what is going on in my brain. If you continue to talk about my child's eating, we're not going to be coming to visit you anymore. And it's like, oh, that sounds so scary. Yeah, well, you asked me to give you an example of what to say, so here you go. Now, how can you use the message of this language in the words that you use in your culture? Right? And then we do that sort of like role play in there.
Ooh, talk about making it come alive in the room.
It's one of my favorite things, honestly. It's because sometimes clients will come and talk about the same people over and over again. And so it always feels like they're in the room with you. And I have this like picture of them, like my brain has formed a 3D, I don't know, vision of that person. And so as they're talking, my brain is like looking at the person on the screen, but also the 3D versions of all these different people around them.
I mean, hey, and when you're in it with somebody, it makes sense that you're able to. I mean, you get the picture of how they're displaying it for you, and whether or not it's accurate or inaccurate doesn't really matter. I mean, how we can curate the space to be closely resembled to this person and their life and how they view that, and help them work through that through a role play or speaking honestly about feeling is the work in itself.
We know as clinicians that we're getting one side of the story.
Yeah.
That's just it, right? And there's no way that we're going to get that 360 view, right? But that doesn't stop the healing from happening. Because that one side is probably what needs the healing the most. Yeah, one of the funny moments for me is, in the past when I've worked with, kids and they talk about their parents, or parents and they talk about their kids, and then I'm walking around Costco and then I see them. And I see them, and it's like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what the client was talking about, or, oh, all right, that was not who I thought, we were working with over here. Because I'm in the community, and I even let clients know at the very first session, like, listen, I'm outside, okay? I am out here with y'all. So, having that conversation of how do you respond when you see me in public. And when I was working with kids, I'd be like, listen, if you see me in the ice cream line, you're welcome to come say hi. I might even buy, slide you a little ice cream too, whatever. But just to kind of like make it light, because sometimes even when you were a kid, when you saw your teacher in public, it was like this, like, oh my goodness, type of thing, But then I just kind of made it a little lighter for them. And, I'm like, you're always welcome to come say hi to Miss Phoebe. That's fine.
Coming back to what you were saying earlier about how we can express in our own language to people in our lives, I think what you were talking about was boundaries or expectations for the relationship. What was that like for you to learn how to do in your own family?
Ooh, that was hard. And I think it's even an ongoing thing. It's scary sometimes because my family has experienced me in the same way all my life. And then all of a sudden I'm coming in with, I'm not going to engage in this conversation, or I'm not, when I get off work, I need a moment. And so please do not try to bring any huge things my way. And also even trying to train myself. Well, what happens when you walk in the house and your dad still wants to talk about huge things without even checking in with you? How do you respond to that? It's an ongoing thing. And I think my family has been mostly receptive to like the different boundaries that I've set. Um, there's like certain conversations that my father, for example, will have or try to have with my kids, and I've told him, hey, that's not something that's appropriate for their age. He's like, okay, so he doesn't really push it. I think because my family respects my expertise also. Whenever I've brought up certain concerns, they respect them, they honor them, and sometimes we have to have difficult conversations, but we also have this like open communication thing in our family for the most part. Especially like I have two younger brothers, and so like among the sibling group, where we're not afraid to share what we think with each other, and sometimes feelings get hurt, you know. But I think that the underlying healthy striving is always there, and it's recognized from each end, right? My end, my brother's ends, that there's no malicious intent behind this boundary, for example, that is being set. So it's hard, and it doesn't stop. It's not really a destination that we get to, because the dynamics are always going to shift. Life is always going to look different. And so as I'm growing, my family grows along with me. And I'm also, like training my kids around things like that, around, like even touch, like boundaries around touch. And also just like respecting mommy's time as well, right? And I mean, my kids also have a lot more emotional and verbal freedom than a lot of kids that, I know of, or kids that are from my culture, right? I know sometimes my parents cringe that, like I let my kids say certain things, like my oldest asking for an apology when I, do something or say something that is unacceptable, right? Like last night, I sat him down and I apologized to him for yelling at him in the morning, because he was just being really slow, and he likes to jump up and down instead of getting dressed. And so I yelled, and in the evening, he's been obsessed with maps and flags, and so he's doing his thing, and I say, hey buddy, can I talk to you for a second? He's like, yeah. And I said, I wanted to talk about this morning. I yelled at you, and that was not appropriate. And mommy needs to work on, her emotional regulation. He was like, yeah. So did you feel bad in the moment when you yelled at me? And I said, I did. Yeah, because I felt like, I could have addressed you in a different way. He said, yeah, I understand. And I also need to do better and actually focus when it's time to get ready for school.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And this
Yeah.
is a 7-year-old, right? But it's because we've started having these conversations at a very, very early age, right? Like he was probably like 3 in Costco telling me to take a chill pill because I was frustrated with him.
Uh-huh. Oh my gosh, this all resonates with me so much, and I'm sitting, here really leaned into this story, saying "wow" as you're talking, because I'm just imagine myself as a kid, even thinking about asking for an apology, or even thinking about saying that what my parents said hurt me, and that was something that wasn't
No.
part of the conversation.
No, it wasn't an option. It was not an option. And so like my middle son, my 6-year-old, sometimes he will say something, and he's been working on his speech for a while, and so sometimes him pronouncing his brother's name and then saying my name sometimes kind of sound the same. And so he will say, well, mommy, I wasn't talking to you. And my mom and I were really big, like we're recently making jokes about that. They're like, how dare you tell us that you weren't talking to us? But that's just, he's not saying it flippantly. He's not saying it rudely. He's just letting you know like that those words were not meant for you. And it's like, okay, first couple times it hurt my feelings, but then after that, I'm like, you know what? Fine, man. Have your own conversation. Because I want them to have their relationship and have their boundary, right? As siblings. Like have your thing. Because at the end of the day, one day mommy's not gonna be around and you're going to be left with one another. I want you all to have that bond, and protect your communication.
Boundaries to maybe the older generations feel like threat. And I hear it a ton in my work with clients, along in my own family when I've tried to set boundaries. how have you navigated that dynamic where it feels like a threat to something, to the relationship, to the hierarchy?
I think that sometimes we make this mistake of becoming defensive and immediately also responding that, they're thinking, the older generation is thinking, oh, like this feels like a threat, and us also feeling threatened and like fighting back with that, when we could actually just sit down with them and have a conversation and explain the reasoning behind that. There's this sense of, well, I don't have to explain myself to people. That sentiment that exists within this general, I would say, like American culture, I would say, like the culture that is opposite of mine as a Ghanaian, as a West African. This, well, I don't have to. Well, you have to, right? This is part of growing. This is part of being an adult and being in relationship. There's going to be moments where we have to explain certain things to people. And one of the things that I explained to my mother was, when I get off work, I don't want to talk a lot. I don't want a whole lot of conversation. And so I had to have a conversation with her and say, when I walk in the house, I need some quiet, please. Right. And to her, it probably felt like rude or, what, you don't want me to talk to you? And I had to explain to her, this work that I do is very, very hard. And sometimes I hear some really, really hard things by the end of my day. At those final sessions, they can be really hard. And so when I get home, I need some silence. I need to decompress. I need to breathe, because I've probably been holding my breath for the last few hours without even realizing it. And she said, oh, okay, that makes sense. Right. So I just said, I just need about 30 minutes or 20 minutes just by myself. So when I walk in the house, I'm probably going to go hide in my closet for a little bit. It really comes down to communication and explaining the reasons why. And I did that. I continue to do that. I mean, there's some times where, she might get excited about something. I just let it slide because I'm just like, I ain't got it today. And then there's other days where I'll just kind of stare at her and she'll just know to leave me alone, because I just have this, I don't know, look on my face where it's like, she's gone. She ain't here. She is not here at all, and she respects that. Right. But it also takes an elder who is willing to learn. My mother has been willing to learn, and I'm so proud of her for that.
And has been to her own therapy.
You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
my gosh.
Yeah, her coming here to the US was one of the things, or the thing, that restored our relationship. And, because I was gone from home for years. And so she did not know this version that I was growing into. And so we were not as close. And now it's like she follows me around like a little duckling.
You guys' relationship, as I've listened to your podcast episodes, it's so fun to listen to, and her openness to talk about these things too is very inspiring to me, and I imagine it would be inspiring to the older generation too.
Yeah, that's my hope. That is my hope. And I always tell her, you're doing the thing that so many of our mothers need to be doing, but they're not doing it,
Yeah. And the type of communication that you're talking about is part of what we help clients do a ton. Being able to clearly communicate that here's the boundary, and recognize that in setting that may impact the person I'm setting it with. And just putting that out in the open, saying it's not that I don't love you or don't want to hear from you or don't think you're important. It's that I just need to re- uh, refill my capacity to be able to prioritize what you're saying. It comes from a place of respect, really, even though in saying that or in setting the boundary, it could feel disrespectful to the other person.
Yeah, especially for those of us who are from cultures where, we have a really strong hierarchy, where everything is shared. And even the conversation about boundaries, there's so much nuance to it, because sometimes it feels very Western to even think about. But before we realize, no, we have been setting boundaries in the past. We just didn't call them that, or we just didn't have a term for it.
Right. And now that term can feel very oversaturated through the media, through just general speak. And it's hard to know if we really even know what that means, And once we figure that out, we have to take the cultural considerations of that and how that shifts and is dynamic through different cultures.
Yeah, and I look at myself as a professional translator of that. And what I mean by that is, so for example, there's this book by Nadra Tawwab, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Right? It's a great book. I recommend it highly to a lot of people. And I'm very careful about sharing resources like that with my fellow immigrants, because it's probably not going to be received well. And so I just take the nuggets out of that book and then I translate it in a way that's going to be palatable and going to be culturally respective and expansive. And then I share that kind of knowledge with my people, because it's just not going to land. Because when we sometimes think about boundaries, we just think about this brick wall. And I'm like, well, it's not necessarily always a brick wall. Sometimes it's a wooden fence. And sometimes that wooden fence has some holes in it too, right? So that you can kind of slide something through to your neighbor, So it's not as scary as we make it seem.
And not just one thing. It's away from that black and white thinking. It can shift, it can be dynamic. And that doesn't make it any less of a boundary. As long as we're still aware of what some of those mini boundary crossings are doing to us, and we're just not like mindlessly letting them happen. How have you seen your Ghanaian heritage and culture impact the way you view healing, growth, even just how you see people that you serve?
Ghanaians are known to be very hospitable, right? We're very lovely people. We're very nice. And sometimes that has meant that we see the good in everybody and we welcome everybody. And sometimes I think about how that Ghanaian mentality has almost made me a default caregiver, right? Or put myself in this role as caregiver for everybody. I'm here to take care of everybody. And I've had to kind of push back on that a little bit, that I'm not here to take care of every single person. I have to take care of myself first. And so that translates in the work that I'm doing with my clients to where, this is going to sound so whatever, like maybe like trivial, but offering them water when they come into session, making sure we have water and tea and all those things. I used to have a box of snacks in my office for my kiddos and my younger people, and like that hospitality, making sure that they're comfortable. I have a blanket for somebody who wants to use it, right? That physical space. I had these clients that I would work with around what would be my dinner time. I would see them. And so that meant that my food was probably getting delivered at that time because I was at the office. And so I would spread it out on the table and we would all eat and talk, right? And because in my culture, that's what we do. We share food. It's community. And I remember like bringing it up kind of like in passing with some previous clinicians, and they're like, wait, what? Like, you eat with your clients in session? I'm like, yeah, because we're hungry. I know they just got off work and they haven't made it home. They came to see me, so I'm going home, and I'm hungry too. Like, you're not going to stop me, right? So there were several times, where they would be like, okay, so what's for dinner today? Right? And again, it's that, these are my clients, right? But like that hospitality and taking care of people is so ingrained in me that sometimes it happens without even like thinking, right? And so that is one of the things that influences the way that I look at my clients, right? I'm not just looking at them as a person that's in passing or just this person that I work with. In some ways, we look at everybody as family, and sometimes it comes across in the ways in which I show care to my clients. And so I would say that my background and my experience, especially as a Ghanaian, has helped me humanize my clients. It's helped me see them beyond whatever presenting symptoms they're coming into session with. I see my brothers in the men that I work with. I see my mother in the older women that I've worked with. I see my father and some of the older, men that I've also worked with, right? There's a connection there, and I think that's one of the ways in which we stand out as a country and as a culture for years, we have always taken in refugees from different countries. We set up refugee camps, and we've always, had those kind of borders where people could come in, and we would take care of them. Right. We've always taken care of people. And so it was kind of hard and painful to, over the last few weeks or months, like hear stories about, xenophobia in South Africa and, you know, South Africans, kicking Ghanaians out or other Africans out and, things like that. Um, because that's not who we are. We welcome people in so many different ways. And not to say that we're perfect because, we have our things. We haven't always been as friendly to the LGBTQIA plus communities and gender non-conforming folks. But I think that that's the influence that I really bring into my work.
As you're bringing some of that influence in the work, how has that inspired change or growth for clients?
Who I think about the people that I've worked with over the years and how impactful it's been. The memories we've created, the stories that we've shared. I would never forget getting ready to go into surgery years ago, and one of my former clients' moms was one of the nurses, and she was, I guess, passing by, saw my chart, and she was like, I saw your name, and I was like, oh my God, that's Miss Phoebe. And she comes in and she's like, oh, my daughter was so and so and so and so, and like, there's just this like smile on her face. Now, mind you, I didn't even remember. I didn't remember in the moment. It took me a hot minute. It wasn't until after she left, but just like seeing that the impact was enough for this mom to step away from whatever she was doing to come in and say hi to me, right? That told me that it must have been a positive experience for her kiddo and for her family. I will sometimes, like run into former clients in public, and they will openly share all the things that are going on with them, and it's such a refreshing moment. And I think that, in terms of like change, even as I'm continuing to work with some clients, seeing the ways in which they're shifting, right? Seeing the ways in which they're not using shoulds, right? The language that's changing for them. The things that would take them, I don't know, weeks to accomplish, they're accomplishing in days. They are talking about having those conversations sooner rather than later. They are, I don't know, challenging themselves. It's been really beautiful and humbling to observe what that looks like.
In our Meet Your Therapist episode, one of the rapid questions was healing is, and you answered right away community. And I can hear that come through so naturally in your work and lead to so much change and confidence and empowerment for clients. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on traditional models of therapy and how they impact those clients or clinicians of the global majority. What are some of those impacts?
There's a lot of pathologizing, I would say, for one. And one of the things that I will start off by saying is that these theories were not created with people like me or people like us in mind, people of the global majority. We were not the consideration for this. They were created with the Western, say, forms of family and ideas of what healing needs to look like. And I guess maybe it's one of my passions to one day have some sort of theory that encompasses a lot more multiculturalism, I would say, even in how we define healing. And I think that because of that, a lot of us as clinicians who have the global majority come in to this field and we start wondering, like, am I quote unquote normal? Am I okay? Am I, like, is there something wrong with the way that I define a family? Is there something wrong with the fact that I'm doing multi-generational living where my parents live with me and my kids, right? Because then the question or the topic of boundaries even comes in, and trying to explain to people like the importance of having conversations with your family before you make certain decisions, like things like that. And so there's sometimes this like self-doubt that comes for clinicians like myself, because when we look at this is my go-to example when I'm having this conversation. Um, Bowen, right? And when we look at systems theory and we think about concepts like enmeshment. Enmeshment to me in so many ways is kind of like the standard family connection for a lot of us, right? And this whole idea of differentiation, um, where you're supposed to be separating from the family system in all of these different ways, whether emotionally or physically. Like there's all of these different things that pathologize our family systems. So, for example, if here, you have a couple that is having a hard time, a lot of times they'll go to a therapist or a counselor, marriage counselor, and then talk to them. And, that's the thing, right? This is a neutral party. But for other cultures, whenever there's a marital problem, the parents are the ones that step in first. And then the elders in the family get called in. The people who were there for the marriage, right? The people who were there because for many of us who are Black and brown, the marriage is not just about two individuals, it's about two families merging. So before even the whole counseling thing comes in, we're working this out in our homes. We're working this out in our family systems already, right? And so as a clinician, when you come into this field, you start maybe pathologizing some of those methods and our indigenous healings and our how we look at even healing and recovery within our families and within our cultures. And so if you're not careful, you're going to demonize or pathologize that and just start to lean towards the Western models and forget that, hey, this existed for decades, for centuries, right? And it worked. There's a reason why our elders are who they are today, right? Not to say that they were perfect, but what ends up happening is that you start looking at your methods and the methods that you grew up with as less than. And that can be very dangerous because then you start having clients who might be from that same culture and they might come talk to you about what it is that they're doing and how their families are working. And you might be encouraging them to discard that or let go of that. And that's how we lose culture. That's how our indigeneity gets lost or minimized. But our role as clinicians is to help our clients or assist them or walk with them in uplifting some of those things, right? And bringing out, instead of trying to tell them, hey, this is what mindfulness looks like, asking them, what does mindfulness look like? Or does that term even exist for you in your culture? Right. So it can be a very slippery slope. Now, I will also say that there are some parts of the theories and the Western, ways of doing therapy that are useful. And there are some lessons that we can take. There's different ways in which we can learn how to communicate or talk about attachment or look at our different parts, right? Like, IFS, borrowing some IFS language there. And helping our clients or walking with our clients and figuring out what do my parts need and what roles have my parts played in all of this, right? So it's not this big either or kind of thing. For us as therapists of the global majority, part of our role is how do we bring some intersectionality, right? How do we mix this in a pot in a way that, is palatable? It might be messy, but it's palatable.
Yeah. And again, messy does not mean bad, although it can feel that way sometimes. And I'm picking out something you're saying there where there's this sense of awareness that we as clinicians should have going into this, and we're not always going to hit it right on the mark. And we might, through the therapy that we're doing, especially early on in our careers, and honestly throughout, might dismiss a client experience because of the model that we're using or because of the systems at which we live in, right? And it's for us to recognize that. Like, I'm thinking of a client right now where we're talking about work-life balance, and comes from a culture where work is a big part of life, and comes with a lot of grounding and relief. And we were talking through that, and one of the first things my mind went to is like, this person's working too damn much. They're burnt out. Of course they are, right? And like, I'm almost pushing this like westernized idea of self-care of like we need to separate from work, we need to have time for ourselves type of thing. I come back the next session because I'm noticing, oh, something just shifted between you and I. And I'm like, hey, last session I felt this and we were talking about self-care in this way. And I'm just wondering, in your family and where you grew up,
Mhm.
how did work fit into life? And I was educated on all these things that logically I knew, but when I got caught in the moment, I'm like, oh no, this is what it needs to look like. And it's so easy for that to happen, and thankfully that recognition helped us like put it out in the open, and some of the dismissing of and bring back the culture, bring back some of this importance and actually figure out a way to still have that self-care in a way that was self-caring for this client.
Yeah, yeah. I love that example. And also, like, great work with your recognition too, and being able to go back, because sometimes we'll recognize things, but we don't always go back, you know.
I think the process of going back is vulnerable as a therapist, right? And I think an easy belief to fall into is the vulnerability is for the client, not for myself, right? But if we're really in that relationship, then it is a little bit of two ways, especially when something like this happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And even as you're talking about, the work life balance and everything, it reminds me of some of the work that I have been doing around that, because I was raised in a culture where, productivity, work, even when you take time off, it's either to, I don't know, because you're sick, really, really sick, or to go to a doctor's appointment. I've known my mom to, she worked for the government and would not be feeling well, would go to work to show that she was really not feeling well, and then go to the doctor, sometimes go back to work. And I'm just like, ooh, this is a lot, even as a child, right? But also, like, this productivity, the financial pieces around that, also because, some of us carry a lot of money trauma. And we know how much like the money part is tied to, how much time I'm taking off, things like that. And I've got to say that it's been hard even till today, right? And so one of the things that I've worked with my therapist over time is, how do I slow down and how do I take time off? And it was like this like gradual thing of, I started off with like taking 1 day a month off, in the last few years. I started off with talking about what that would look like, and it sounded so scary, but she did such a great job with me and like doing the baby steps around taking time off, because where I'm from, taking time off means you're going home. You're going home to your village, you're going to go see your family or your elders, that sort of thing. And so that was kind of like the mindset that I had too. And so we've worked it out to where like now I'm able to take a whole month off in the summer. Now it's scary still, and I'll probably be tempted to work, but again, part of my work is setting up those safeguards to where I'm not working. Right. And my EA is like checking me to make sure that I'm not working. She knows that yeah, like she'll look at my activity and be like, "Ma'am, why are you responding to that email? Why are you in your messages? What are you doing? Right? Why is this on your calendar? Why there's a meeting on your calendar? Why is there a meeting on your calendar?" Again, that accountability, right? Because my therapist is not going to be there. Again, going back to what I was saying about the importance of community, right? My therapist is not going to be there to check. She doesn't have access to my calendar, but my EA does. Right? My executive assistant does. And so she is going to be looking on that calendar to make sure that Phoebe is not working because she's supposed to be off. And one of the reframes around that is that I take my birth month off because also my mom and I share a birthday. So then, it's our time to relax and rejuvenate. And also, I'm showing my mother what that could look like too. I mean, granted, she's retired, but just showing her like we have gotten to a place in life where we can breathe, we can relax. We don't have to do the grind thing anymore. We're okay, right? And I know that sometimes it's scary for her too, but it's been a learning for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lifelong learning,
Oh, yes.
you know,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that's probably going to continue to happen.
Who you tell her?
And I even think about the vulnerability it takes for you um, to communicate with your executive assistant in that way of like, this is what I'm working on and this is what I want for my life. Can you be the one who pays attention to this when I fall into my old patterns or whatever it might be? That there's this emphasis on community, and the process of actually integrating a community is scary.
It can be very, very scary because, yes, those are the ones who will check you. And it takes a lot of humility to allow yourself to be checked too. So it's great to have those people in your life who can, that you will share your goals with, and they can hold you there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Right now in the world, what do you feel like, and this is even strays further beyond the borders of the United States, what do you think people need emotionally?
People need safety. People need to be able to have spaces where they can express themselves emotionally, where they can say, I'm not okay. They can say, I need help. They can say, I want some change, or I just need you to hold me. Because we're going through a lot as a world, and some of us are pretending like we're okay and we're just kind of going with the flow and all that stuff. But I think that we need those spaces where we can come and be undone. Where we can come undone. There's a lot of sacrifices being made. There's a lot of fights that are going on. And I'm not even talking about like physical fights, but like pushbacks against the systems of oppression and all of those things. And so we're going out, we're doing this work. We need safe spaces to come back to and put our bags down, and to have folks in our lives who can say, come, let me hold you, right? Or people who can see us, and people who can, I don't know, gas us up and encourage us to keep going, because the fight is long and it's hard and it's not ending anytime soon.
Right.
We need safety.
Do you think that type of isolation has always been there, or where did that level of safety go?
That isolation, I feel, has been there. Perhaps not to that level. And I think because we're starting to pay more attention or closer attention to things, and we're naming some of these things more, like the loneliness pandemic and all that, now it's like in our faces because we're starting to see the impacts. So these things have existed. We may not have experienced those impacts years and years and years ago because we were just kind of going on and on and on. But now those seeds that were sown then, we're starting to see the fruit, right? We're starting to see now the evidence is there that we have a loneliness epidemic, that we are not doing okay as a society, that we've lost track of what it means to take care of each other. I'll never forget, I moved from an American school to I would call it a Ghanaian school when I was younger. I think this must have been 6th grade. And well, I moved in 4th grade and I spent a week in 5th grade, and then I got moved to 6th grade. And I remember my classmates, I was sick. I didn't show up for school, and my classmates heard that I was sick, and they went to the market and bought fruits and bought like food and things and brought them to my house. And I remember being shocked. Like, wait, what? Y'all care about me this much? Like, okay, right? And here is what the thing was, that struck me the most. I was living in Ghana, right? But I found myself in this American system of a school where things like that were not happening. But when I look back at it, this is our culture, right? And so there is this westernization that a lot of other countries, developing countries, for example, have been trying to reach. That in trying to reach that, we are letting go of some of our values, especially around community. Right now, the grandmas are having to go back to work. So who is going to be there to take care of the grandchildren? Now we have these adult family homes, and so we're putting our elders in there. We're not living with them any longer. And so who is going to take care of them? The kids are not growing up to see their elder aunties, uncles, because everybody's working, everybody's on the ground. And this has become a standard that has been maintained over the years. And now it's starting to hit us in the face that our lives are not what they used to be. But this has been going on for a while. And I'm in a place where like I want to call us back into community. I want to call us back into Sunday dinners. I want to call us back into family reunions. I want to call us back into connection and asking for what we need. Right? Sometimes I'll just let my friends know, like, I just need to be held. Right? And it feels so vulnerable. Like, ooh, are you coming across as needy? And sometimes like I'll have to like check in, like, hey, I'm feeling like I'm coming across as needy. And my friends are like, no, this is not you being needy at all. Right? It sounds like this is what you're needing. Right? So allow us to hold you in these different ways. Right? I'm calling us back into that vulnerability of letting us know like we need each other. Right? There's a Fred Hammond song where it says, I need you, you need me. We're all a part of God's family. Stand with me, agree with me. It is his will that every need be supplied, right? And our needs are not going to be supplied if we're not, one, letting people know what we're needing, and two, if we're not allowing ourselves to be a little inconvenienced, to be able to meet other people's needs, right? Because people tell, oh, I didn't want to bother you, but are we truly friends if you've never bothered me before? Last night I'm trying to get my hair done and my mom walks in with these boxes because she needs them put together. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to watch my Grey's Anatomy and get my hair done. And I had to check myself in the moment, like, your mother needs you. Your mother doesn't ask much of you. Because guess what? Even after doing all that, she was like, oh, have you had dinner yet? Do you need to eat? What are you going to eat? And she went and came back. You didn't say what you're going to eat. What do you need? Because this is what community is. We take care of each other, even when it feels inconvenient. But these days we want soft life, right? Hashtag soft life. And we forget that it's not just about us. There's a world that exists around us. And so if we're really friends, why aren't you calling me in the middle of the night when you're crying? Why aren't you letting me know that you've lost somebody? Why aren't you letting me know that you don't know how you're going to make your bills at the end of the month? Right? Because, oh, I don't want to bother you. I know you have a lot going on. Yeah, I have a lot going on, but you're also my person. And so I take care of my people. Right?
I think that, yeah, you're absolutely right. The world, it's been this way for a while. And now with it in our face and with the introduction of all these other things that make life softer or these relationships more frictionless, we as people are starting to move away from what relationships really are. And it's those two things you're mentioning where we can still go to someone even when our brain's telling us we're inconveniencing them because we know they care and we care about what they have to say.
Yeah. We act like people are disposable. I mean, think about it also, like the world that we're in right now, there's so much disposable stuff around us, bags, trash, like look at what we're doing to the planet, right? The idea of recycling is not even like, we talk about recycling, but are we truly even recycling, right? And so I think that as there's the shift happening industrially and societally, it's also showing up in the ways that we interact with each other. And so we look at people as disposable. So like, I can just unfriend you if I disagree with you. I can unfollow you. Or if I'm on a dating app, I can just swipe left because I don't like you. We're looking at people as disposable. We're not even putting in that effort to try with people. And we're calling it boundaries.
And it's sad.
It really is. It really is. It's heartbreaking.
Well, Dr. Phoebe, I end every Beyond the Intake episode with 3 of the same questions that I ask every guest. And we'll just go into that now. Yeah. So starting off with the soft hitter, frictionless, right? What's a small joy in your life that you've been loving recently?
Decorating. I've been loving that. Just being able to create a space that is authentic and unique to me, and being able to pick pieces that speak to me, and realizing like I actually have choice here, and I can make this space however I want to. It's really brought me a lot of joy.
Decorating your home, your office,
My home. Yeah, it's been really, really nice. Because I also suck at it. I really do. I suck, but I'm learning different things, and I'm leaning into community even around that too. Like, I'll pick something, or I'll let my friends know, like, hey, I need some help with picking this, and they'll let me know, well, no, that carpet is too loud, or this or that, because again, I'm realizing where my limitations are. I'm good at swiping a card. Listen, I will swipe a card or I'll tap a card all day, every day. But picking the right pieces that go together, So it's been nice just to like also know that I'm doing this with community, and that's brought me joy. I'm on all these different websites and putting little things together, and it's like, oof, look at you creating your own space.
Oh, I love it. I love it. What's something your clients have taught you about life?
Something that my clients have taught me about life is that we always have an opportunity to impact and bring something to somebody. Whether it's change, whether it's joy, whether it's a laugh, we always have a chance to influence somebody, even in like the littlest ways. Sometimes it looks like me just, walking in the store and seeing somebody and be like, okay, glasses, I like those glasses, and just seeing that smile on their face. Yeah, those little things matter.
Okay, last question for you today. If you could share one message with your younger self, what would that be?
Ooh, that is such a great question, and also very timely, because I've been working on my memoir, and in packing and cleaning up and everything, I've found some of my old journals from like high school. And so I will tell her that she will get to be that person that she needed when she was younger. She will get to be that adult, that trusted adult. She's going to have the privilege of sitting at a table with younger versions of her and be able to pour into them, be able to bring them joy, to be able to make them laugh, to be able to teach them lessons, that she's not going to remain young forever. She will be an elder one day, and will get to be a different kind of elder because of the things that she's gone through. Yeah. Yeah, I just had a moment here thinking about a few weeks ago. I took one of the kids that I nannied when I was in college. She's in college, and I took her out shopping because, she's in college, and college students are usually broke. And I remember walking around the store with her, and she's getting crafts because crafts are what calm her down. And she's getting all these like different supplies, and I'm like, get whatever you want. She's like, whatever I want. It's like, yeah, just get it. And then we're walking through, and she says, wow, Auntie Phoebe, this must be what it feels like to have a rich auntie. And I was like, you know what? I couldn't tell you because I never had that. But I'm glad I get to be that for somebody else. Yeah, that's what I would.
Wow. I'm sure she's hearing it right now.
And I know that she is very, very proud of me.
Dr. Phoebe, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to sit with me. I mean, I know this is we got the format here, we got the mics, we got the computer going and the lights and all that, but this conversation has helped me feel pretty seen in my own experience. It's felt therapeutic, and really, I think it's felt that way because I feel so in community with you, and I'm so happy to know you. So thank you for taking the time with me. And for anybody listening, if you'd like to connect with Dr. Phoebe, her information will be in the show notes, of course. And yeah, how would you say you'd want the community to connect with you?
I'm on the socials, right? I'm on the Instagrams and the TikTok and all that stuff. But
And a wonderful podcast yourself.
yeah, Between Two Worlds with Dr. Phoebe. Yeah, so you can connect with me on my website. I like to yap on there every now and then with this blog, and it's www.phebebrakolmft.com. And I'm also on Instagram and TikTok as Dr. Phebe Brako. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you put my name in Google, something comes up. So
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. And hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future.
It would be really awesome. Thanks for using your voice the way that you're using it. It's really important. We need voices like yours, for sure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of In Session. If something resonated with you, let us know on any of our socials or directly on the podcast episode. If you want to be featured on the show, please DM us or reach out to our team at insessionpod@outlook.com. That's insessionpod@outlook.com. Please like and follow, and we'll see you on the next episode.